Part 4: The Architecture of Reform. Chapter 7: The Ethical Infrastructure: Building Systems that Make Honesty Work. One of the problem with relying on virtue. Most societies still treat ethics as a matter of character. If only we could elect better people, the system would behave better. But integrity collapses when it's left to personality alone. The economist Elinor Ostrom, who studied commons governance, proved that systems thrive when rules and relationships reinforce trust. People aren't inherently corrupt or pure, they respond to the design around them. Ethical infrastructure means building institutions so that good behavior is easier than bad. 2. From culture to code. Moral intentions need architecture, laws, transparency, and feedback loops that convert values into behavior. Just as city planners use curbs and lights to prevent accidents, democracies can design institutional guardrails to prevent ethical drift. The difference between a code of conduct and an ethical infrastructure is enforceability. Codes tell you what's right, infrastructures make right action the path of least resistance. 3. The three foundations of ethical infrastructure. Foundation. Purpose. Example. Transparency. Makes wrongdoing hard to hide. Open data portals, real-time spending dashboards. Accountability. Makes wrongdoing costly. Independent audits, whistleblower protections. Participation. Makes good policy self-correcting. Citizen assemblies, participatory budgeting. Together, these create a feedback system where ethics isn't moral heroism, it's maintenance. 4. Transparency, seeing without permission. Transparency starts with information that citizens can actually use. Governments now release thousands of datasets, but many are buried in formats no one can read. Ethical infrastructure requires actionable transparency, plain language summaries, visual dashboards, automatic notifications for budget changes. Examples. Estonia's e-government lets citizens track legislation from draft to vote. New Zealand's well-being budget publishes not just dollars spent, but social outcomes achieved. Toronto's open data portal maps procurement and spending in real time. When data becomes daylight, shadows shrink. 5. Accountability, the cost of betrayal. Rules without consequences invite mockery. Accountability means credible, independent enforcement. Independent auditors general must have guaranteed funding and access to all records. Integrity commissioners need public reporting deadlines. Ethics tribunals should operate transparently, with clear conflict of interest thresholds. The principle is simple: when breaking trust costs more than keeping it, most people keep it. 6. Participation, the antidote to alienation. Cynicism recedes when citizens can touch the process. Participatory budgeting, first pioneered in Porto Alegre, Brazil, lets residents allocate portions of city budgets. The result: higher trust, lower corruption. Citizens' assemblies, randomly selected panels that deliberate on major issues, have successfully informed policy in Ireland, abortion reform, and France, climate law. These assemblies combine diversity, expertise, and transparency. They convert spectators into authors. Democracy thrives when listening becomes visible. 7. The infrastructure of truth. Information integrity now depends as much on technology as on ethics. Creating a public interest internet involves independent algorithmic audits for social platforms, mandatory disclosure of political advertising sources, public ownership of data standards so knowledge isn't privatized. Truth must have its own plumbing, pipes that carry verified information faster than lies. 8. Ethics by design in bureaucracy. Inside institutions, ethics should be designed like workflow. Decision logs require that every policy file include reasoning and data sources. Red team reviews, internal groups tasked to challenge assumptions before decisions finalize. Rotation systems, Move officials between headquarters and frontline service to maintain empathy. When morality is proceduralized, good judgment scales. 9. Learning from other fields. Aviation. Every accident leads to a transparent investigation shared globally. Result: steady decline in crashes. Medicine. The patient safety movement made error reporting non-punitive, increasing disclosure and saving lives. Corporate governance. ESG reporting forces firms to quantify ethics. Government can borrow the same principle, treat moral failure as data, not taboo. 10. A digital ethics infrastructure. Artificial intelligence and automation complicate accountability. Who is responsible when an algorithm discriminates? Ethical infrastructure here means mandatory human oversight for high-risk systems. Algorithmic impact assessments, AIIAs. Public registries of government algorithms. The EU's new AI Act moves in this direction. Canada's forthcoming AI and Data Act could embed similar safeguards. 11. The economics of integrity. Honesty isn't just moral, it's cost-effective. The World Bank estimates that corruption drains 5% of global GDP each year. Transparency International data show countries with stronger integrity frameworks enjoy higher growth and lower inequality. Reframing ethics as infrastructure investment makes reform politically realistic. Every dollar spent preventing graft returns many in saved waste. 12. Building a fairness constitution. Beyond laws, nations can codify a fairness constitution, a living document of measurable equity goals, access, representation, information, and justice. Each ministry would publish fairness metrics annually, audited publicly. Citizens could challenge results through an ombuds network. The Fairness Constitution would turn moral aspiration into an operating system. 13. Training for integrity. Ethical infrastructure depends on people who can use it. Public service training should include behavioral ethics education, how bias, pressure, and fatigue distort judgment. Professional guilds, law, medicine, engineering, already use continuing ethics education, politics rarely does. Imagine if MPs were required to complete annual ethics simulations like pilots do flight checks. Integrity would become muscle memory. 14. Cultural renewal. Infrastructure alone isn't enough, it must be matched by a cultural signal that honesty is heroic again. Public storytelling, films, documentaries, school curricula can normalize integrity as ambition. When ethical leaders are celebrated like athletes or entrepreneurs, young citizens start aspiring to serve, not just to succeed. 15. Closing reflection. Systems don't become ethical by accident. They become ethical by architecture, through feedback loops that reward honesty, design patterns that keep compassion visible, and laws that make transparency as routine as accounting. When ethics is built into the wiring, not painted on the walls, honesty stops being a sermon and becomes the standard operating procedure of civilization. End of Chapter 7. The Ethical Infrastructure, Building Systems that Make Honesty Work. That chapter explored how tax systems, wages, and public investment can reinforce the same ethical principles, turning fairness into economic strategy rather than rhetoric. This next chapter shifts from institutional ethics to economic morality, how fairness and accountability can be embedded in taxation, labor, and investment so that the economy itself teaches integrity. Part 4. The Architecture of Reform. Chapter 8. Rebuilding the Moral Economy, Restoring Fairness and Trust Through Policy. 1. The price of fairness. Every nation has two economies, the official one measured in GDP, and the moral one measured in trust. When the moral economy breaks, numbers rise but lives don't. People sense the imbalance even when the indicators say growth. The result is quiet rebellion, withdrawal, resentment, apathy. A moral economy isn't about charity, it's about designing exchange so that decency pays. It asks the same question Adam Smith asked before capitalism existed: how do self-interest and conscience coexist? 2. The myth of the invisible hand. Classical economics assumes markets regulate themselves through competition. But markets, like governments, inherit the ethics of their architecture. When tax loopholes reward evasion, when wages stagnate while profits soar, when speculation earns more than service, immorality becomes efficiency. A 2023 IMF report estimated global tax avoidance at $600 billion annually. Every dollar hidden